4, 3, 2, 1. Hello, hello, hello. It is Thursday, and I am Holly Holiday, your J.E.D.I master and guide through implementing equity plans. I am Holly Holiday, your J.E.D.I master with Holiday Advisors, and today we are continuing a multi-part series. I don't even know how many parts it is at this time because it's just so many parts, but a multi-part series on implementing equity plans. We are now into the second cycle. So the first cycle or phase was the planning cycle. We are now in the implementation cycle. And if you missed our planning cycle, no worries. We have it available in our archives. You can go to our website, Holiday Advisors, and check it out there. It's also available on in our YouTube channel. Just to level set kind of where we are in this process, when thinking about implementing equity plans, first of all, you have to know it takes time. And it takes many rounds of going through some four key cycles. And the cycles include planning, implementation, monitoring, evaluation, and then sustainability and scalability. And what I love about it and why I refer to it as a cycle more so than even a phase is because cycles are never ending. They just kind of keep going round and round and round. The other thing that's important and why I cycle, the language is important, and language is critical, frankly, when dealing in justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion issues. Justice is critical. And language is critical. Justice is critical too, but language is critical. Is because that's how you really can be a big part of communicating intention. And so the important part of recognizing that implementing equity plans as a cycle is because, one, it never ends, and two, you come in and out of the cycle at different points. It doesn't have a core place to start. You can actually start in any of the cycles, but eventually, no matter where you start in the cycle, you will roll your way around to doing all of the things. And if you're doing it right and you're doing it with sustainability, you'll roll your way around to all of the things multiple times. So in previous J.E.D.I Live lunch breaks, we have dealt with the planning cycle. The planning cycle includes things like conducting an equity assessment, making sure that you have set and clear objectives, making sure that you involve stakeholders, identifying the funding and resources, and of course, one of my favorites, legal review. But today, we are now forging ahead into implementation cycle. An implementation cycle has 5 key components that I want to talk about, and we will talk about one each week. So this is what you can expect over the next 5 weeks. Today, we're going to talk about leadership and governance. Ooh, one of my most important things that I love, leadership and governance, because a lot of things happen and a lot of things are birthed there and are definitely led from that space, but frankly, also killed from that space. We will talk about the role of training because a lot of folks, there's a lot on training. The idea behind pilot testing, and this is, starting small, getting bigger. Number 4 would be rollout. And then number 5, communication. As you can tell, this is one of my favorite things to talk about. So today, let's jump into leadership. All right. So when we think about leadership and governance, first of all, it is important not only, so leadership and governance happens a couple of ways. So first, you have your traditional organizational institutional leadership, which generally includes some executive level staff, as well as potentially board members, stakeholders, or shareholders, possibly in some cases, some advisory committees. But whatever your governance structure is, it is important that before you can move forward with really implementing a plan, that you not only have approval from your executive structure, but most importantly, that that you have some type of buy-in from the executive structure. What's the difference? Well, it's one thing to kind of look and say, yes, I approve this or I approve that. It's another thing for them to be putting their goodwill behind it, making sure and helping to enforce the fact that it's going to show up in a bunch of different places, helping to validate that this in fact meets and is consistent with the mission and vision of the institution. And so that's an important role that leadership plays. Also, it is a signal to everyone. And when I say everyone, I do mean everyone. It is a signal to everyone how important equity will be to the institution. So when we're thinking about the governance, we definitely want to start with the institutional governance. Again, that is going to include executive staff. It will also include boards and advisory boards and potentially even shareholders or stakeholders who have a high level influence into the institution. But more importantly than those folks, or should I say just as importantly, you want to make sure that you establish a core accountability team, which is also a level of leadership and governance for the equity plan itself. If you're like most institutions, implementing an equity plan is brand spanking new. And so you want to make sure that you have some experts and some cheerleaders and some folks that can help guide and shepherd the process, particularly if this is your first time. But even if it's not your first time, you'll find that having some a core group of people that's helping to provide accountability for all can be very useful in making sure that you are meeting your goals and objectives. So what could this look like? Well, it could look like having a dedicated staff person that works with a team. This could be a chief diversity officer or equity officer. It could be operations person. It could be someone else who you have dealing with talent and culture. Now, note here that when I use the word talent, I am using talent and culture. In an ideal situation, equity plan development should not live within a human resource department. Now, human resources, our talent people are very important partners, but ideally to ensure that this really moves beyond just the talent part of your institution, you want to deal with a group governing the equity plan that reports to an executive team member, if not to the top executive, and has real support from the top. Now, if you don't have a dedicated equity officer, then you may consider putting together a steering committee or a team of leaders that's regularly responsible for review. This again is critical because this allows you to both make sure that you have somebody who's keeping the trains running on time. It also helps you to have someone who can surface potential challenges and risk so that they can be dealt with quickly and efficiently. And then it also helps you because it allows you to track the good progress as well. And and having someone that internal stakeholders can, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said internal, that stakeholders in general can use as a resource at any time. Again, also, I would say in terms of your leadership and governance, this is an excellent opportunity to bring in a consultant. Now, a word about consultants. The consultant is really there to support the internal governance team, not to do the work of the internal governance team. So just know when you start this, you need to make sure that you have some dedicated staffing that can help hold the line of accountability, or at least some dedicated leadership. Even if you also have, and to be honest, if it's your first or second time, I highly recommend that you work with a consultant if you don't have the in-house expertise, because a consultant can help make sure that you are using success practices in order to implement your plan. But again, where we want to start, you want to start with your institutional governance structure, making sure that you have alignment and agreement amongst your C-suite executives, as well as your board members, shareholders, and advisory members. And then second, you want to make sure that you have established an accountability structure that can be led by an equity officer, but also could be led by a group or steering committee of leaders. Well, that was a lot. And trust me, as easy as that sounds and as maybe simple as that sounds, getting it done can be a lot more challenging, which is why the third part of this leg of the stool is to consider a consultant, such as myself at Holiday Advisors, or one of our consulting partners. We made it through another 15 minutes or less. Next week, we'll be talking about training, and I'll go over some of the core trainings that I recommend, particularly in the beginning of thinking about an equity program, as well as running through some of the more advanced training. There's also mandatory training, which we recommend for every annually, if you will, and we'll run through all of those things and not much more than that, because we only do this for 15 minutes. Until then, I will see you next week. This is Holly Holiday, your J.E.D.I master, and offering you J.E.D.I insights in 15 minutes or less. See you next week. Join me next Thursday for a new edition of J.E.D.I Lunch Break Live right here on LinkedIn.